Hi, my name is Reggie Walker, and today our group is going to speak to you about the effects that native warm season grasses have on the northern bobwhite. Picture here, we have your typical male northern bobwhite. As we can see, it is a small bird with a rounded body, small head, rounded wings, and a short tail. These birds travel in coveys, which refer to a group of birds and run across the ground from shelter to shelter. These birds prefer to walk, however they are fast flyers and will do so when they are flushed or alarmed. The northern bobwhite, commonly referred to as the bobwhite quail, is the most noble of all upland game birds. This bird is often referred to as the classic farm wildlife species because of its historical abundance on farms. These farms once provided habitat efficient enough for the northern bobwhite to survive. However, due to urbanization and other changes in the land, we have lost critical northern bobwhite habitat. The northern bobwhite thrives in early successional habitats. These early successional habitats can be found in crop fields, pastures, and fields that have not been mowed for some time. Shown here is a typical early successional habitat. Early successional habitats are areas in which the majority of the land is made up of bushes and saplings. These areas are constantly changing and last less than 20 years before trees begin to grow and a forest develops. As you can see from the picture, the grasses and weedy species are very tall. This meets the northern bobwhite habitat requirements. The northern bobwhite requires a minimum of 9 inches of overhead cover for nesting. We can see that this is good habitat for the northern bobwhite. The diet of the northern bobwhite is fairly diverse. These birds rely on a variety of wild and cultivated seeds, fruits, leaves, stems, and insects. A young bobwhite's diet consists of insects and animal matter, but adults primarily feed on vegetation. Historically, the northern bobwhite has been a popular game bird. They are highly social, meaning they interact with other birds, and they display activity year-round. For Tennessee, the northern bobwhite is designated our state game bird. Unfortunately, this once popular game bird is on serious decline and has been since the late 1960s. In some areas, northern bobwhite populations have decreased from as much to 70 to 90%. This bird faces a distinct and imminent threat of extinction. So why is there a decline in northern bobwhite populations? A limiting factor is defined as an environmental factor that tends to limit population size. A major limiting factor for the northern bobwhite is the loss of cover. The northern bobwhite is consistently losing the cover it needs for nesting and protection. Much of this is due to habitat loss. This habitat loss is due to the conversion of lands to other land uses. Shrinking native grasslands with increasing forest and pastures are the main cause for this decline. The northern bobwhite needs clumps of vegetation where they can nest. Much of this is due to the conversion of native grasses to exotic grasses such as fescue. The red list is a list for classifying species based on their abundance. It is drawn up by the World Conservation Monitoring Center. This bird is listed as near threatened, and the majority of this can be drawn back to habitat loss. Current populations do not look good for the northern bobwhite. Native grasslands are consistently being converted to other uses, and as a result, we're losing quality habitat. In order to keep this bird from being threatened, efforts must be made in restoring and providing habitat for the bobwhite quail. This starts with reestablishing native warm season grasses.
Native warm season grasses were once one of the most prevalent species in North America. These grasses are capable of a multitude of things that help establish and sustain surrounding ecosystems. These include, but are not limited to, providing protection and a native habitat for a number of different species and giving support to other grasses surrounding it. They also provide quality habitat for ground nesting birds. As stated in the name, native warm season grasses grow to full maturity during the warmer seasons of the year, usually through early spring and late summer, and then remain dormant throughout the fall and winter. There are also many different species that are classified within the native warm season grasses, but to mention a few located here in Tennessee, behind me, there is the little blue stem, big blue stem, switchgrass, Indian grass, and then there are 3 other native warm season grasses that are important. They are the side-old scramma, eastern gamagrass, and broom's edge. Each of these specific species serve a different purpose in the environment, whether it be nesting grounds or to serve as foraging food for livestock and other herbivores in the wild. These native warm season grasses are truly amazing within the bounds of nature. Once established, they require minimal requirements for supplemental water or fertilizer. This makes them one of the ultimate survivalists in the plant world. Due to this, they are able to be drought resistant and typically disease-free, allowing them to survive anywhere. Native warm season grasses are also able to adapt to all of their surroundings and making them very stable even within varying environment changes. Besides providing a home for many different animals, they are also used by many farmers and homeowners for a large range of different applications. In the farming sense, farmers often plant large plots of a specific native warm season grass in order to provide areas for their livestock to forage for food during the warmer months of the year. In addition to the option of the livestock to forage the living grass, there is another option presented in which they allow the grass to grow and then cut it at a certain length and turn it into hay for even more use. Livestock and wildlife use is not the only limits within the range for native warm season grasses. How often have you been driving down and seen, possibly unknowingly, these grasses lining roadways, riverbanks, and on farms? On farms, it is used in several different locations alongside crops. But for what reason is it here? Due to its dense nature and vast root system, it makes for an excellent tool against soil erosion. The large root systems provided by these grasses are able to essentially hold the soil and other surrounding plants in place during large rainstorms or even during washout type conditions. These root systems can also be used as a filter along certain farmlands. The roots are able to filter out sediments and even pesticides from neighboring plants. The types of grass, as mentioned above, have different purposes that they are most suited for. A prime example of this is with the northern bobwhite, who makes the habitat out of broom's edge grass, as seen here behind me. The thick underbrush provides a safe home for bobwhites where they are able to nest. Its density allows them to be safely hidden from predators, in addition to providing nesting grounds. The density of these grasses not only plays a role for the birds, but many other animals as well. Most often, deer use these types of areas as bedding for similar reasons. They are very thick, which provides safety and protection from different elements for them. They also provide as a food resource for them. However, there are some instances where the dense vegetation proves to be impossible to penetrate for many species, which is both an advantage and a disadvantage depending on the specific animal being discussed. In the early 1900s, Europeans introduced cool season grasses. Throughout the century, these grasses spread all across North America, replacing our native warm season grasses. Native Americans were one of the first peoples to discover prescribed burning. Prescribed burning, or a controlled fire, is essential for native warm season grasses. It is essential to keep an area in which early successional state, which quail commonly thrive in. The lost art of prescribed burning in the southeast has resulted in the loss of our native warm season grasses. As you can see, these native warm season grasses play a vital role in a large number of ecosystems. However, over the years they have steadily been declining for a few different reasons, most largely in part to new construction and the destroying of the plant and wildlife in certain areas for residential and commercial use. This could all be prevented and even restored thanks in part to the grass's natural ability to recover, adapt, and overcome challenges that it faces.
Fescue is a solid-forming grass that does not provide cover for quail and other small animals. One way in which people commonly eliminate fescue is during the fall. They will apply the herbicide known as Roundup and Plateau. Fescue is an exotic grass from Europe. It came in as a contaminant and grass seed. Fescue that we see today was engineered at the University of Kentucky in 1931. By 1943, they released the problem cool season grass for agriculture use. Fescue was planted widely from the 1940s and is still being planted today. Although there are some characteristics that make fescue desirable, it is tolerant of drought and low fertility. It produces large amounts of forage. It is easily established and easy to manage. Fescue is a mat-forming grass that restricts the movement of small animals. Fescue outcompetes native warm season grasses and forms monocultures. One of the major downfalls of fescue is that it is infected with the endophyte fungus. The fungus produces a phytotoxin, also known as an alkaloid. This disease is called summer syndrome or fescue toxosis. The disease causes excessive body temperatures, elevated appetites, body loss, weight, and lower fertility rates. In laboratory settings, the Slender syndrome has shown to cause lowered sperm count, lowered egg production, stunt and slow development of the young that were born. The lower forage quality and causes abortions. This fungus is widespread and is in 80% of the fescue. The fungus lives in a symbiotic relationship with the fescue. This endophyte fungus is toxic to animals. For this reason, the animals will only eat fescue as a last resort, and is another reason why it has taken over our landscape. It has a low predation rate. Fescue is grazed to very short heights, which leaves no cover for critters. In the winter, fescue is cut to the ground height, and this really impacts the cover for bobwhite quail. There are approximately 120 to 140 million acres of fescue covering our nation. The thick growth pattern that fescue creates stops other plants from growing. This produces a monoculture environment that eliminates species diversity. Wildlife animals require a diverse landscape. When fescue is covered by snow or ice during the winter, this makes it even more of a problem of making the grass even worse for the animal species. The field on the left is the typical scene that you would see in the southeast today. This field produces very low quality habitat for wildlife. As you can see, there's no nesting or brood cover for the bobwhite quail. There's not any good high quality food for the animals here either. This looks terrible. As you can see, this is monoculture at its best. This habitat is good for nothing but livestock. The most notable of all waterfowl, the Canada goose, would find this a suitable field to graze in. Other than that, nothing at all. And this is what our society has grown accustomed to and expects to see in our modern day times. This field to the right is what a good quality habitat looks like. There's plenty of species diversity, as you can see. The native warm season grasses are around 4 foot tall, which provide excellent cover for the bobwhite quail. This field is a typical pristine Tennessee landscape that has been ruined by modern day agriculture. That has led to the demise of the northern bobwhite quail.
I'm here to talk to you about the relationship between the noble upland game bird, the northern bobwhite quail, and native warm season grasses. For one, they promote early successional species. Quail need a variety of different species to function. As previously discussed by David, native warm season grasses promote better diversity than tall fescue, and because of this, quail thrive in the more diverse habitat. A few of the species of weeds that the northern bobwhite typically forage on are partridge pea, ragweed, beggar ticks, and foxtail millet. All of these weedy species are more abundant in native warm season grasses than they are tall fescue. The limiting factors for quail is cover. Native warm season grasses typically provide adequate cover for the northern bobwhite. Native warm season grasses can be used for cover in the winter too. The northern bobwhite typically need adequate cover for nesting purposes. Native warm season grasses provide cover for nesting opportunities and essential for the northern bobwhite to successfully nest. The northern bobwhite are also an insect eater, and they have to have native warm season grasses to forage on. Quail are weak scratchers and need bare ground to adequately obtain food. This is one of the main reasons why fescue is bad, because fescue is a mat-forming sod grass. The quail cannot walk through the dense vegetation, find food, or escape from predators. Our native grasses are clump-forming grasses. This means that the grass grows in one large clump, allowing bare ground to surround the grass. The clump-forming grasses allow the quail to escape from predators, forage, and travel. This study shown here on the PowerPoint shows how native warm season grasses are helpful for a quail and a population trend of the quail in a local area. The study was done by Southern Illinois University. In the study, they used two different types of fields. The first type of fields that they used were unmanaged, and the other fields were managed. Essentially, what they did was they left the unmanaged fields alone, and the managed fields were eradicated of fescue. They then planted native grasses, which was thought to benefit the bobwhite quail. In conclusion, they noticed an increase in the population of the northern bobwhite that was in the managed fields compared to the unmanaged fields that were dominated mainly by fescue, in which they found no increase in the quail population. They also found that quail preferred a more diverse habitat and higher quality grasses, rather than poor quality grasses such as tall fescue. This example shows that native warm season grasses influence quail populations. In conclusion, native warm season grasses have many advantages over fescue and benefit quail far more than fescue does. As David has discussed earlier, fescue is very abundant on the landscape, and most of the southeast, and particularly Middle Tennessee, is quite abundant with the exotic cool season grass. This can be related to how the major loss of our prairies and grasslands, which contain native warm season grasses and native weeds in them, are creating a major population decline of northern bobwhite. It is known that the conversion of our landscape from fescue to native warm season grasses and the restoration of our grasslands are vital to restore populations of the northern bobwhite. Future population trends are still uncertain for quail, but it is thought that the bird will continue to decline, mostly because fescue is still dominant on the landscape. This is because most agriculture farmers believe that fescue is the answer for their livestock. To conclude on this presentation, the northern bobwhite is in a state of serious decline, and according to the red status list, as Reggie talked about earlier, it once was the most important game bird in the southeast, but is now near threatened. It seems that the decline of northern bobwhite numbers seem to go hand in hand with the loss of lands of native warm season grasses. It is clear that the only way to conserve and protect this bird is to convert fescue to native warm season grasses. This is our works cited page. All of our sources are very credible. Most of them came from the Natural Resources Conservation Service, the National Wild Turkey Federation, the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency, and a variety of universities. It is my pleasure to speak to you today, and from all the people that spoke here in this presentation, we just want to say thank you for your time.